let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. I think this was one of the most intriguing teams this entire season going into the postseason. The Packers were really hot, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Jordan Love and this young group of receivers came out early on and just showed what they were made of. They did a fantastic job, especially winning a playoff game, making it that far. I think all Packers fans should be very excited with how well this team did. But I think if we all take a look back, we know the one issue was the defensive side of the ball, especially the play calling. Everybody's calling for Joe Barry's head. We did a video saying we thought they were going to move off of him, and they did. So now the next question is, who will be the next defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers? We have an article today talking about some of the options, but there's one guy in particular I think that Green Bay likes, and we as well think he's going to be a great fit for this Packers defense. Let's get into the article, then talk about it on the other side. This, of course, is from SB Nation. In 3 days since former Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry has been let go from his position, the Packers have reportedly set up interviews with 4 candidates to fill the vacancy. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley, Bills linebacker coach Bobby Babich, Cowboys defensive line coach Aiden Durde, and Broncos DB coach Christian Parker. Per a report from Andrew Mertig of the Pack a Day podcast, 2 sources told him that Parker is not only currently in Green Bay, but he's been offered the job to be the team's next defensive coordinator. In 2019, Parker was hired by Green Bay in his first NFL role as a defensive quality control coach under then defensive coordinator Mike Pettine. He held that job for 2 years before being offered a full-time on-field coaching job by the Broncos as their DB coach. In 3 years in Denver, Parker was retained despite coaching under 3 different head coaches and 3 different defensive coordinators. Notably, he coached under Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, current Panthers defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero, and current Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph. Nick, I think this guy would be a phenomenal fit for the Green Bay Packers. We see in Denver, he was retained under 3 different head coaches. 3 different defenses said, hey, this guy is good enough. Most notably, you look at Vic Fangio, Vance Joseph, those are the biggest names here. But this guy went under 3 different defensive coordinators, and they said, we need to keep this guy on staff. He is good enough to be on our team. So I think this could really be an under-the-radar pickup for the Packers as far as being a really good candidate for their next defensive coordinator. Curious what your thoughts are, Nick. But Packers fans, let us know in the comments below. Do you want Parker to be the next defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, or do you think there's somebody else better? Let us know in the comment section below. But Nick, what are your thoughts on Parker?
Well, I think first we got to take a look at what the Green Bay Packers issues were defensively looking at this past season in 2023. I think their front 7 with their mixture of veterans and some young guys like Van Ness are really good. I think they could get a little bit better there, a little healthier there in some circumstances down the stretch, but I think their front 7 was certainly good enough. I think their secondary outside of Jaire Alexander was scrappy. They were competitive. They played hard. They fought to the football, forced some turnovers, but whether it was structure, talent, or most likely a combination of both, that was the weakness of the team. And I think one of those things down the stretch really hurt the Packers because it came down to big 3rd downs against San Francisco. Their secondary couldn't make plays. Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion, out-schemed Barry, and of course that knocked the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs. I think addressing the defensive backs as a collective group will be critical for Green Bay in terms of making that their number 1 priority on the defensive side. And you talked about how Parker coached under 3 great defensive coaches. I want to focus on Vance Joseph, who, in my opinion, is the best DB guru in all the NFL. He's been around the block a long time. He's coached defensive backs, been a head coach, defensive coordinator. No one knows defensive back play and coverages, different schemes, playing to your team's strength more than Joseph. And this is exactly the guy Parker learned the most from. Remember, like you said, defensive coordinators were changing, head coaches were changing in Denver, but all of these defensive guys, and especially Vance Joseph, right? Defensive backs guru looks at Parker and says, I want to keep my defensive back. I want to keep him as my defensive backs coach on my staff because I think he's that good of a coach. Christian Parker, to me, feels like a special kind of candidate. And I know he's young and I know he's inexperienced, but Barry was a seasoned defensive coordinator. Barry had a lot of experience. He wasn't good enough for what the Packers need. I think going a more youthful direction on the defensive side is the right move to make. They need to insert some energy, some spark into this defensive team. I felt at times they would just rely on some of their guys to make plays. Hey, Preston Smith, make a play. Hey, Quay Walker, make a play. You know, really put your guys in tough situations. Hey, Jaire Alexander, you got to make a play. put too much pressure on the players and not let the scheme and design and the structure put them in good positions to be successful. I think Parker did a great job of that in Denver. That's why all those coaches really loved him. And I would love him. I think he'd be the perfect hire for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and we look at the defensive side of the ball, like you said, their front seven, very good, a lot of young talent. So I think that is worth noting that they can really just, develop and keep that group coming through. There's not a whole lot that you need to add there for them to be good. In the secondary, there's a lot of good players there as well. But I think Parker would be a great, talent evaluator, be able to help through the draft, through free agency, come in and help them build this secondary position. Because outside of that, the rest of the team, pretty solid. Quarterback great, running back great, receivers are looking good. Offensive line is pretty decent, especially the tackles are looking great, and tight end's great too. So I think really just building up this secondary is going to be the key here for the Green Bay Packers to make an even deeper playoff push next year. And Parker seems like the man up for the job to get that done.
And just one thing to end on, if you look at where Joe Barry cut his teeth as a coach in the college and NFL level, he was a linebackers coach, right? He loved putting all the pressure on the linebackers. And Packers fans, you saw that in certain situations. You had linebackers covering receivers in zone kind of coverages. And then obviously didn't work a lot down the stretch. I think going off the mindset of a linebackers coach as defensive coordinator, which was Joe Barry, and switching to a defensive backs coach as your defensive coordinator, which would be Christian Parker, is the right tactical change to make for your for your defensive side of the ball. Like you said, the offense is in great shape. I think, like I said, this would be the perfect hire for the Green Bay Packers. I love the fact that they're going in this potential direction too. I like going young coordinators. I'm not a big believer in bringing in retreads who have been around the NFL a long time, especially if they just got fired and they're on the market. There's a reason they're on the market. I think the Packers need to go young, and I think Parker would be the perfect guy to do just that.